This is the Multiplane camera system, and it's one of the most revolutionary innovations in animation history. It fundamentally changed how animated films depicted depth, focus, and realism forever.
It is the blueprint of a piece of equipment designed to make cartoons more realistic and enjoyable. This is the plan for a super cartoon camera. We call it the Multiplane camera.
The idea of the multiplane was to increase the convincing nature of the world that this story took place in by giving it a sense of depth. I'm J.B. Kaufman. I'm a film historian. For me, that can mean many things, but for me, it basically means American films of the silent and early sound years. Most of what I've published to date has been on the history of Disney animation during the Golden Age. So I've written books on the making of Snow White and Pinocchio and the Good Neighbor Latin American films and so on. The whole reason that I do what I do in film history at large is that these films are great and timeless, but like any work of art, I think you appreciate them more if you know something about them.
This is my Lego model of the original 1937 Multiplane camera created by Bill Garity for the Walt Disney Studio. And it all began with the Academy Award-winning short, The Old Mill. However, the roots of this idea began before Disney's breakthrough with an early and often overlooked animation pioneer, Lotte Reiniger. Those that follow my work and this channel will know of my deep respect and admiration of Lotte Reiniger's work, a German filmmaker and animator known for her silhouette animations and a style that predated Disney's full-length feature film by a whopping 11 years. In 1926, she created the first known multiplane camera system to give her enchanting cutout animations a sense of layered depth. Her method involved placing different layers of vellum paper, backgrounds, and characters at varying distances from the camera, creating a dynamic sense of space and movement. While her setup was rudimentary compared to Disney's, Reiniger's innovation set the foundation for what would become a significant leap in animation technology. Where did the idea come from? Who had it?
That is a really good question, and I can't give you a definitive answer. I am inclined to think that a lot of that came from Garity. He was kind of the go-to guy when somebody wanted a new effect, or even I think he cooked up some of these things on his own. Bill Garity, you may know, was pretty much the leading technical wizard at the Disney studio during the 1930s.
Bill Garity and his team designed a towering camera rig with multiple layers of glass, each containing a different element of animation: backgrounds, midgrounds, foregrounds, etc. This allowed the camera to move in and out of these layers independently, creating this illusion of three-dimensional depth never before seen in animated films. The first use of Disney's multiplane camera was in The Old Mill from 1937. This compelling short about a mill that is battered during a storm was the perfect visual story to test the technology's capabilities. The multiplane suddenly opened up the studio's ability to create emotional resonance within the narratives of their feature films. It became the backbone of Disney classics like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Pinocchio, and Bambi. This camera rig defined the lush, immersive look that would become synonymous with Disney animation. When I was a little kid, I would sneak out of my room late at night after everyone else had gone to sleep, and I would flip on Walt Disney. And I would just eat up every frame of these behind-the-scenes special features that they would air as part of the Disneyland Anthology series. I mean, they had these incredible artists and Imagineers demonstrating how they would encounter a problem and then fix it. This was fundamental in my own personal development as an artist and as a filmmaker.
Everything's okay except the bottom level. What's wrong down there, Alan?
I was moving it the wrong way, Dick. I'm taking it back now. How's that?
Looks fine now.
When a lot of people talk about today's films as opposed to the earlier ones, the attitude tends to be, well, the technology is so much better now. And my comeback to that is always, not better, just different.
Mm-hmm.
And, the multiplane is not in use now because there's no place for it in the way that most animation is done now. It's not obsolete. Whenever those conditions are recreated, it will still have the same utility that it had then.
I started building multiplane cameras around 2009. Every version I constructed was a tribute to the past innovators like Reiniger and Garity, each layer a delicate balance of precision and creativity. My first attempt was a clunky, crude homage to Reiniger's version. I started with a wood home entertainment system that I found at a thrift shop. I used the frame structure to build out a single plane system, put some lights underneath a plane of glass, and used vellum paper for a solid, opaque layer. Our early silhouette films were not only tributes to Lotte Reiniger's work and spirit, but we really wanted to try and use the same materials and techniques that she pioneered 100 years earlier. We used the same type of black paper, found sheet lead to make the puppets out of, and even adjusted the camera by hand on a crank wheel to get the same type of parallax in our films. Even though modern technology would have made these films a lot easier and faster to make, we were driven to try and keep these techniques alive. We were inspired by the ingenuity and cleverness of the earliest surviving animated films. If Lotte Reiniger could do this 100 years earlier, why couldn't we do it now? I'm now going to show you the process of how I built my most recent iteration of the multiplane camera system. A local university has hired me to build this iconic tool for their students to practice animation on, as well as hopefully make some films with. Now, I've designed something that lies somewhere in the middle of Lotte Reiniger's more accessible designs from 1926 with Bill Garity's more sophisticated design from 1937. I first drew up some designs inspired by Bill Garity's work, and then the client and myself worked out a few changes to make their version easier to use for just one person instead of a whole team. This meant moving the linear actuator the camera sits on from the back of the multiplane to the front, as well as additional accessibility adjustments. It's time to take these 4x4 posts and lock them in square, so I can carve out some channels with my trusty hand router. Now, I mark the spot for the T-track, which will sit flush with the surface. Here, I'm dry fitting the T-track and testing the hardware. Again, I use the hand router to cut out a perfect center square, leaving a solid frame. Next, I use a rabbit bit to carve out a 1/4-inch shelf around the interior edges for the acrylic to sit snugly. If I did my math right, the acrylic should fit perfectly. It's assembly time. I use square clamps to lock the posts in place, keeping everything perfectly square. Before I can proceed, I need to lay down plywood and shims to get everything leveled out. Thankfully, it's not rocket science, just a lot of measuring, adjusting, and leveling until everything's good to go. I grabbed a linear actuator off Amazon, normally used for CNC machines, to make the camera glide up and down in smooth, lockable measurements. Off camera, we paint everything black and start installing the T-track. All the housings for the lights, with adjustable barn doors, were built off camera. They slide right on thanks to the exterior T-tracks. Pretty fancy. Since I know absolutely nothing about lighting, electronics, or DMX, I called in Aaron to do all the lighting and wiring. Thankfully, modern tech helps us control all 8 lights individually through the Dragonframe animation software. Now that the Multiplane camera is set up at Biola University, I'm going to create a simple silhouette background out of black cardstock and vellum paper. I'm going to make a little silhouette puppet to go with it so that we can demonstrate how this tool can be used. According to Lotte's book, she used sheet lead and thick black paper to build her puppets. And true to form, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Sheet lead is toxic, by the way, so always wear gloves and don't breathe in any of the particulate you create when sanding it. There's 3 reasons to use sheet lead on a puppet like this. 1, it's heavy and will keep the puppet flat on the glass. 2, you can cut it with scissors and shape it with regular tools. And finally, as an added benefit, it's strong and balances the puppet. When it comes to the background, I'm going to follow her technique to a T. I start by drawing out a nice composition with a white pencil, and then cut out the details with an X-Acto blade. Underneath everything, I'll add some layers of vellum paper. First, I lay down a sheet of vellum paper to diffuse the background. Then, Aaron and I adjust the lights, position everything at the right distance from the camera, and finalize the staging. Using Dragonframe, we're able to see the shot in real time and tweak the framing until everything looks perfect.
I'll tell you what, the work that some of us do, like with the Hyperion Historical Alliance, you know, I think it is widely regarded as kind of a niche area of interest. But I believe that niche is a good deal bigger than some people think it is. And you know, there's a I mean, I've always thought that there's a tremendous romance attached to the story of these people who set out almost from ground zero to create these wonderful works of art. I think more and more people are starting to appreciate the romance of that story. So there's a great appeal in details like the devices that they built in order to make this happen, like the Multiplane.
This 100-year-old device is so important to film history and animation history that last year LEGO released a set that just happened to include a little mini Multiplane camera system. And they even included one of my favorite Easter eggs of all time. It has the original layers of Walt's demonstration from the Disneyland Anthology series. And my only complaint about this set is that it came with a little minifigure of Walt Disney instead of Bill Garity, whose original patent and design I have right here. Thank you so much for checking this video out. I hope it has inspired you to make your own Multiplane camera system. We as a community have to do everything that we can to keep original animation techniques alive. I'm going to keep using it because I love the result and it makes me happy. And it also makes me feel connected to the history of animation. Thank you.